What is up, Unity community, and welcome back to another official Unity live stream here on twitch.tv/Unity and, of course, the Unity YouTube page. My name is Jackson. I am one of your community managers, and it is my job to bring you all of the content that you see on these channels. Thank you so very much for being here. It is our hope that you come to these live streams, you connect with your Unity community, with our guests, with our fellow Unity employees, and that you leave here feeling a little more inspired, informed, capable, educated, all of those good things. Thank you so very much for being here. We've got a great show for you all, as it is Shader Graph Day. And we've got the legend Ben Cloward back together, back in the seat again, ready to show us some new features for Shader Graph, as well as diving into a couple of tutorials and bite-sized pieces of knowledge for you all. So we've got a lot to look forward to. What I would love to hear from all of you, as always, is to let me know where in the world you are tuning in from. As any community manager will tell you, seeing just how broadly your community reaches is one of the most fulfilling and rewarding things. So again, thank you everybody for being here. I know I've said it a few times, but I'm so grateful. Of course, all of the familiar names are here, and it's so encouraging for me to see you all settling in before the stream starts, welcoming each other in. That warm energy is one of the most impressive things about the Unity community. So saying hey to the Bull, to Caleb, PZ Gamer, or PZ Gamer if you're in Canada like I am, NSNA, some familiar faces here. And then over on the Twitch side, we've got HNXZX, we've got Ryan, we've got FJ Flippy, we've got Mwenmen, Andrew is here, Koi Code is here. Everybody, welcome on in again. We're live on these channels twice a week, typically Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we are here to teach you either Unity specific things or engine agnostic game dev things. So again, fantastic to have you here. Thank you to Jack, our producer, popping in chat to call out my baby face. I did indeed have to shave, and now I look like an infant. So don't hold it against me, please. I think it's time. We're here. We did it. We should bring in the legend themselves. Please welcome back to the show, Ben Cloward, Shader Graph Wizard. How are you?
Hey, doing great. It's great to be back. Thanks for inviting me, Jackson.
Ben, I tell you this, and it's not me inflating your ego. It's not me blowing smoke in your direction. It is a dream to work with you. Every single time we've come together for something content related, you have a plan, a vision. You keep our Unity community in mind. You say, I want to help people learn. It is fantastic to work with you. So, Ben, if you said, hey, I've got 400 stream ideas, I'd be like, let's do them all. Let's do them all. So, of course, if anyone is just tuning in and today's their first Shader Graph Day and they don't know Ben, the Shader Graph Wizard, can you tell people a little bit about yourself, your background, your journey to getting here?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I'm a staff technical artist at Unity. I've been at Unity for just over 4 years, and I'm a member of the Shader Graph team. So a bunch of the features that I'm going to be showing you today, and some of the ones that I won't be showing you today, I've actually had the pleasure of helping to develop. Before joining Unity, I worked for BioWare for about 14 years on games like Anthem and Star Wars: The Old Republic. My video game career actually goes back about 25, 26 years. I started working on games for the PlayStation 1 back in 1999. So I've been around the block a few times.
Good. And of course, bringing all that wisdom, knowledge, experience here and sharing it with us. We are eternally grateful. Ben, what have you been playing lately?
That's a good question. I just picked up the new Tales of the Shire, a Lord of the Rings game, because I was looking for something cozy.
Tell me about it.
I've been really busy at work, and it's nice to just kind of be at home and relax and pretend I'm a hobbit for a little while. What I will say about Tales of the Shire is, if you're looking for a game that makes you feel powerful and heroic, this is not what you're looking for. But if you just want to relax and pretend you're a hobbit for a little while, this is perfect.
Awesome. I like that a lot. And I think there's been one or two times where we've caught a glimpse of your desktop. So we know that you're a Lord of the Rings fan. So
Yes.
this is good. It seems like it's a perfect fit for you. Um, as we get into today's stream, we're doing it a little bit differently. Typically, we have you and Ben, and you show us tutorials, how to cookbooks, as someone has called them recently, which I liked. I think it paints a picture really well. We're going to showcase some new features, and then we still will get into those later. I feel like we should go through a couple of disclaimers as a result of some of the YouTube comments that I've seen lately. The format and style of this stream, while there is a lot to learn, is a live stream, and as a result is very community focused, community centric. It is casual, it is conversational. We want to answer questions from the chat. We see you all happening live. So if you watch this as a VOD after the fact, you might be missing a little bit of that side of this experience. But as long as you're prepared for what's to come, and the expectations are appropriately set, then I think we're in a good spot. If you are watching this as a VOD after the fact, I'd love it if you could come and check out one of these streams live. I think that is the ultimate experience and the ultimate way to consume this content. If you are looking for a right to the point, very compact, very straightforward tutorial for shader graph, you should probably go and check out Ben's channel. All right, youtube.com/Ben Cloward. Ben has fantastic content, uploads once a week, Ben.
Yep, once a week.
And shader graph optimization is new content as well. Some lighting tutorials, usually about 15 to 20 minutes, Ben.
Yep, some of them are really long. I've had videos that are up to an hour, but yeah, 20 minutes is typical.
Awesome. Okay, so if you want the information and none of the frills, go and check out Ben's channel. The other thing that I'll point out, because it was pointed out to me, if you hear me typing, it is usually in me looking for resources, links, or responding in the chat. Someone was like, it's so rude of him. He's not paying attention. It's disrespectful to the guest. I'm here. I'm multitasking a lot. If you see me doing that, that's what's going on. But I feel like with those disclaimers, we should be a little bit ready. Ben, to kind of set the stage for us, again, Shader Graph Day, monumental. Everybody should know about Shader Graph Day. But if this is someone's first time, what is Shader Graph?
Right. So Shader Graph is Unity's built-in node-based shader editor, and it allows artists and designers with no coding experience to define the look of their projects, create really cool-looking materials, all in a user-friendly, easy-to-use interface. And if you haven't seen it before, we'll be taking a look at it today.
Perfect. We have two things I want to do before we really dive in. First, I want to bring you a couple comments from Twitch. Janiscu says, Ben has awesome guides. We had another comment up here from NSNA. Today, I finally caught up on Ben's tutorial videos. Took me a while, but was fully worth it. So lots of positive feedback. And if you've been in one of these streams before, you know Ben has it. The question I wanted to bring as we are talking about Shader Graph broadly and generally in this moment, the bull, as the stream was starting, says, I've been thinking about this since last Shader Graph Day. What ways can you use Shader Graph for function instead of art? For example, turning a UV map into a map for what kind of cover that an arbitrary geometry provides for a unit behind it. Something like that, maybe? Any thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of things you can do in Shader Graph to turn Shader Graph into a tool rather than into just, putting pretty pictures on the screen. One example that comes to mind is you can measure the angle between the world space up vector and the angle that your surface is facing. So if you have like on your terrain, for example, if you have a specific angle where your character can't walk on that angle, like steeper than, 35, 45 degrees or something, you can create a shader that will indicate where that area is traversable and where it's not. And that makes it really easy to make adjustments to your environment so that areas that are intended to be traversable are, and areas that aren't. So you can create these like visual indicators for yourself of things like, the steepness of the terrain.
I like that a lot. Maybe there's some future content there, right? Bringing in shader graph to be, functional tools as opposed to just artistic opportunities. Listen, I told you already. If you have 400 ideas, Ben, we'll do them all. So you just let me know what we want to do here.
Yeah, just one more thing on that topic.
Please.
If you grab I think it's the feature examples sample from the shader graph package manager, there's an example in there of how to project a 3D grid on your environment. So if you're blocking out your level and you want to put a grid on it, so it's really easy to see the measurements of distances and that sort of thing. Like, if you have a specific jump distance and you want your environment to show you, can my character make this jump? There's a shader in the feature examples sample that shows you how to set that up.
That is awesome. Caleb says 5 minutes in, and Ben just blew my mind. I will be using that, which is great. Elvis Barbosa says, "What Unity version will support these new shader graph features?" Which is great because I think that prefaces us perfectly to dive into them. And I will say here as well, we're going to be talking through some of these. We're going to be having a conversation. We're going to answer a couple of questions as they come up. If you want the detailed, not quite patch notes, but announcement information, I am putting that link in the chat right now. It is a discussions link posted by Ben's team, and it's got all of the details about the upcoming releases. So, Ben, is this 6.3 alpha? Is that where we're at with this?
Yeah, that's right. We have a pre-release version of Unity 6.3 available now. Normally we don't recommend people actually work on their game projects in pre-release versions. But if you want to see what's coming before we get to the LTS, so you want to try out new things, it's in Unity 6.3. So everything that I'm going to be showing today is new in Unity 6.3. And there are a whole bunch of new features. 6.3 is going to be an incredible release for shader graph. So we wanted to take this opportunity on the stream today to introduce some of them. And everything that I'm going to be showing today are features that our users have asked for. So they've come to us and posted feature requests and said, "Hey, we want this, we want that." So all of these things have been user requested features, and we get a lot of these requests. So we're doing our best to add as many of these user requested features as we can. What I'm going to preface this by saying is that in addition to the things that I'm showing today, there are still 3 major new features that we haven't announced yet that will also be coming in 6.3. And we're probably going to need to wait and talk about those on the next stream. But I think you're really going to like them.
Baiting a hook, Ben. That's what I like to see. Ooh, to hear about those, make sure to like and subscribe. Come on back later.
Yeah. So anyway, so like I was saying, 6.3 is a really exciting release for us. If there's one release that is big for shader graph, it's this upcoming Unity 6.3.
That's exactly what we want to hear. Let's take a look because we have 4 distinct things that we did want to show off before that we then jump into some templates, some overview, some tutorial type stuff. So the first one, Ben, I'll let you unveil each one as we go. What are we about to show off here?
All right, so we have just recently added support in shader graph for additional sets of texture coordinates. So previously, if you wanted to edit your mesh in Blender, Maya, or 3ds Max, however you create your model, you could add up to 4 sets of texture coordinates. So you could apply your color texture with one set of coordinates and your normal map with another set of coordinates. But now, brand new in Unity 6.3, we've added support for a full set of up to 8 texture coordinates. And for me, like, I'm old school. I started out making games for the PlayStation 1 where we had one set of UVs if we were lucky. So for me, like, I thought 4 sets, wow, that's a lot. But people were actually asking us, can we apply 8 sets of texture coordinates? And now in 6.3, you absolutely can. So anywhere in shader graph, for example, in our UV coordinate node here, where you choose which texture coordinate set you want to bring in, we now have a drop down that instead of going from 0 to 3, it goes from 0 to 7, and you can pick all of the texture coordinates applied to your model. So there it is on the UV coordinate node in the drop down. And here in our sample texture 2D node, we also have the same drop down here with 8 sets of texture coordinates. You can use this for all kinds of things. So if you're creating a particle system and you're exporting particles out of a different package, you want to put that data in texture coordinates, you can store that information. That what they are is slots where data can be stored, and it doesn't necessarily have to be texture coordinates. You can store things like colors or just all kinds of other information, like whether or not the surface is flammable, for example.
Ooh.
Or if you were making a big chunk of geometry in an external application that represented your terrain, for example, you could paint a mask and store this mask data in texture coordinates for where the various terrain materials should be applied, and then bring that data in. And there's space, like I said, for up to 8 of them. I do want to preface this by saying, the more texture coordinate data you add to meshes, the heavier they become. And so you're going to pay a little bit higher cost in terms of like memory and performance if you're adding all of those extras in. But we wanted to add this because some people said, hey, we absolutely need more channels for storing data on our meshes. And so that's what we've done. We have 8 sets of texture coordinates available in shader graph now.
More is always better. Mr. Awesome in the YouTube side asks here, could you use it for physics calculations?
Oh, that's interesting. The data that's baked into the texture coordinates is static. And so if you wanted to store things like how jiggly this particular part of the mesh should be, yes. But you're not storing like calculated things that change frame to frame. You're just storing properties of the mesh that are, specific to that part of the mesh. So you wouldn't store like the speed something was moving or um, something that you'd calculated and that would change, but you can store, information about the mesh that's not going to change frame to frame.
Sorry, missed the mute button. Always good context. Again, I like that you are providing the context as well as to why these features are in. This is a highly requested one or frequently requested one. Is there anything else we want to touch on this one before we jump to the next?
Just that I'm really interested to see how people will use it.
Okay.
So if you're excited about 8 texture coordinates and you come up with a cool use for it, definitely post it in the shader graph forum.
Awesome. And I'll put a link to the discussions in here as well. Andrew the Day asks, is using extra texture coordinates more efficient than just creating an extra map?
Yes, because textures tend, well, I guess it depends on the resolution of the map, right? So adding extra texture coordinates to your mesh is going to make your mesh take up more memory, but because you're storing this data per vertex, it's not as much memory as storing it in a large texture generally. It depends on like how many vertices are in your model versus the resolution of your texture. But in general, information stored as texture coordinates tends to be more efficient than it as a texture map. Yeah.
Very nice. So this is one of the 4-ish main things that we'll be highlighting that's new. What is number 2?
Okay, so let me jump over here and I'm going to show you this shader that I have set up here. What I've done here is I've plugged our normal vector in world space into the world normal input. And this is what's called a custom interpolator, which means I could do some calculations in the vertex stage of my shader, and then I can interpolate that and then pass it in the the pixel shader stage here. So my world normal that I'm passing in here in the vertex stage is then coming out here in the pixel stage, and I can use it for the world normal of my shader. And the result of this shader that I've created here is this nice little chrome ball that we've got here. And right now, our normals are doing something that's called interpolation, which means that I have a normal per vertex. And when I'm passing that per vertex normal into the pixel shader, it's being blended. So each of the vertices has its own normal, but then in between the vertices for each individual pixel, the normal is being blended. And that is why my chrome ball looks so nice and smooth. And what we've added in Unity 6.3, if I pick this custom interpolator block here, oh, by the way, anytime you're in the vertex, the vertex context of the master stack here, if I hit the space bar, it brings up this create node menu, and I can pick custom interpolator here, which will add another block, which means I have additional channels to pass data through from the vertex shader to the pixel shader. And what we've added in Unity 6.3 is the ability to control the attributes of the interpolation. And let me show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to open up our graph inspector here, and we have this new setting specifically to the custom interpolator block, which is for interpolation. So right now, everything that we were doing previously, it was always linear interpolation. Jackson's favorite word, lerp.
Lerp.
Yes,
Love it.
lerping.
Love more lerps, everybody. Lerps
so
and swizzles.
Yes. So that's what we're doing now. We're linearly interpolating our world normal. But now I have this drop down, and I can choose no interpolation. And so if I want to not blend across to all of the pixels, I can turn interpolation off. And now that my normals are not being interpolated, if we switch back to our scene now you can see that instead of being nice and smooth, we've got an amazing looking disco ball.
I was just going to say disco ball looks great.
Absolutely. And that's because we're not smoothly blending our normals across from the vertex shader to the pixel shader anymore. We're just using individual normals for each of the individual vertices. And so this same feature can be applied to all of the data that's passed from the vertex shader to the pixel shader. So you could use this for UV coordinates. You could use this for color. You could use this for any of the other information you're doing this with. So instead of a smooth blend, you end up with chunky data that's not blended, but it's got hard boundaries on the edges, between faces. So if you're passing something from the vertex shader to the pixel shader and you don't want it to be smoothly blended, this is the feature that you want to use.
This is great.
Yeah, thanks. And there is another use for this. If you'll remember, we had our drop down here that had two different options. We have the option to do no interpolation, and then we also have the option to do no perspective correction. And let me show you what that looks like. I don't know if there's anybody on the stream that remembers what PlayStation 1 games used to look like. It's been a while. But the PlayStation 1 hardware did not have the ability to do interpolation with perspective correction. And so what we end up with is here we have a wall, and right now it looks kind of normal, but I have the perspective correction feature turned off here. And so if I come and look at it from like an angle over here, can you see how it's kind of getting warped? And the UVs don't look like they're smoothly blended. That's because we're not applying perspective correction to the interpolation of the UV coordinates. And so there's this warping going on. And so if you want to do something like make your game look like it's running on the PlayStation 1,
There we go.
this would be a really good feature to use. Now obviously there are some other things you'd want to throw in there, like making the vertices kind of wiggle around and making your texture kind of like blocky looking.
Mhm.
But you also need to do this like no perspective correction. And so now you can just drop that box down and choose no perspective, and you've got it.
That's great.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions. Andrew Jones says, yes, but why? And Koi Code says, what's the possible use for this? So you already kind of touched on it. Is the general application just very stylized decisions and making things a little bit easier to achieve a specific look?
Yes, that's absolutely one thing that you might want to do with this.
Mhm.
Some other examples, I already mentioned making it look like it's rendered on older hardware.
Great.
If you had data that you needed to calculate in the vertex shader and then also access in the pixel shader, but you didn't want it to be smooth. Now, I don't have a perfect example for that, but I know that there are a lot of our users that do because they've been clamoring for this.
Great.
So yeah, again, if you use this to great effect and you have a cool example to show, we'd love to see those in the forums.
Absolutely. And again, I've just put the other link there for the discussions in our chat, both on Twitch and YouTube. So go and check those out. Take a look, share, connect, all of those great things. So we have looked at changes to interpolation, which I've said 100% correctly every single time. We are looking at our 8 texture coordinates earlier. What is our third new feature to show off here?
All right, so this one requires a little bit of setup. Gonna have to explain some things here. Here I have what's called a subgraph, and I've talked about subgraphs a little bit on the stream before. But what this is it's a node that I've created that has nodes inside it. So if I double click on this node, it jumps me in, and now I'm inside that node, and I can create other other things inside here, and it's a way of organizing my graph. So if I have a big chunk of nodes that I'm going to use in multiple shaders, I can put all of those inside a subgraph and then use that subgraph in a bunch of different shaders.
Mhm.
Normally, if I want to pass some data into this subgraph, I can use the blackboard, and I'm going to use the blackboard here. And I'm going to add a new property that's just called my parameter, we'll call it. And if I save this now and we switch back to our graph here, now you can see that my parameter has showed up here on my subgraph. And I can now connect other nodes to that input port, and it will pass the data into my shader. So that's one thing that's really important to know. And the second thing is in my shader, if I want to expose properties to edit in the material, so down here you can see my fancy looking disco ball material.
Is it right behind our heads? Okay, I see it on the
Oh, it
right side now.
is. Yeah,
It
yeah.
is, but it's visible on the right side now.
I can move it up here.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
All right, so there's our disco ball material. And if I select that, its options show up in the inspector, and I can change the parameters that are exposed. So if I'm here in my shader and I open up the blackboard, I can add a parameter here. Again, we'll just call this my parameter. And this time, that parameter is now going to show up over here as a property of the material. So if I want to edit what my material is doing with the shader, I can pass parameters in like this. So anything I add in the blackboard here shows up in the material parameters. But if I add things in the blackboard of my nested properties, they show up as exposed pins here in when I add the subgraph to my main graph. Now, here's the question. What if I want to put a property inside my subgraph and have it show up over here as a property of my material. Well, previously you couldn't do that. And so if you had properties that you needed to have inside the subgraph, but then exposed to the material, you'd have to add them in the Blackboard here, and then come here and also add them in the Blackboard here, and then connect them up. And this is a huge pain, especially if you have nested subgraphs, especially if if you have your shader graph and you have a subgraph, and then inside that subgraph there's another subgraph, and inside that subgraph there's another subgraph, and and that's where you wanted to have that exposed property. You would have to do the plumbing to get that material property connected up all the way through to that
Right.
nested. But now in Unity 6.3, what we've done is this parameter here that I've added. Well, let's see, inside my nested property. So I have this keyword that I've added. And if I open up my graph inspector, we have this new checkbox called Promote to Final Shader. And what this is going to do is this property in my subgraph Blackboard is now exposed as a material parameter instead of as a port on the subgraph. So if I select my material here, you can see this use texture property shows up here on my material instead of me having to add it here and then connect it to the subgraph. So what I could do with this is I could have a subgraph. Actually, let me go ahead and do this.
Please.
I'm going to add a parameter here just to show you how this works. I'm going to say, like, this is called my new parameter. And this is inside my subgraph. I'm going to check this promote to final shader and then hit save. And as soon as I do that, it shows up here.
Perfect.
As an exposed property. Now, let me show you an example where this is really helpful. I kind of mentioned this previously, but let me just fly over here in our sample scene to this rock shader. This is a cool looking rock shader. It has a base set of textures. It has detail normals, and it has this animated raindrop effect on it. And the animated raindrop effect is created with a whole bunch of subgraphs. So here is the shader itself. Let me just turn things off so it's easier to see. So we have the base textures here, the macro detail, color bleaching, micro detail. There's a lot of things going on in this shader. And over here at the end, we have this section that's called rain. And so this is the core shader. Then inside this, we have this rain rocks subgraph. And inside the rain rocks subgraph, we have another subgraph that's called rain drops. And then inside the rain drops subgraph, we have another subgraph that's called rain parameters. And this one, you can see I've got this parameter here called is raining. And I've had to wire it from this rain drop spot to the rain rock spot to the rock shader all the way from the top to the bottom.
Whoa.
And now, instead of doing that, I can just come in here to my rain parameters subgraph, and I could put all of the parameters that have to do with rain. Is it raining? How wet is it? How strong is it raining? And I could put these inside the subgraph and check that box. And now wherever I put this rain parameter subgraph, those properties will automatically be exposed to the material. So wherever I put this, whatever shader I put this subgraph in, these parameters will be there. And it works with parameters as well as keywords. So let me show you just a quick example here. I'm going to jump back to my little sphere over here. And so inside my nested properties subgraph, I have that use texture parameter. And in this case, it's a Boolean keyword, which means when it's false, I'm just using a value of 0.2, but when it's true, I'm using this texture sample here. And so if I come back to my scene and I pick my material and I check that box, now the material is adding that blockout texture to my ball, and I'm free to adjust what's happening inside that subgraph without actually having to connect it up to the main graph.
Wow. Time
So,
savers.
yes, absolutely. And it's brilliant for organization because you can package up these sub features like rain, and you don't have to do any extra wiring. I can just throw that rain subgraph in and know now all my parameters that are inside the rain subgraph are automatically going to be added to my materials. I love it.
Yeah. We also had Lupo and Jihad refer to this as the Russian nesting dolls of
Yeah.
subgraphs, as we're slowly
Yeah.
jumping down. Davina called it the inception of subgraphs. And now, sidestep all of it.
Yeah.
Save yourself some time. That's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else that we want to touch on here? I'm trying to see if we have any questions directly applicable to this topic. Kieran says, could you provide an example of using a keyword Boolean over a typical one? I don't understand the use case particularly. Is that something that we could tackle?
So the reason that you have keywords is because you want to and so the real answer for that is that it's cheaper. If I use a keyword Boolean, under the hood, Unity is actually making two different shaders and swapping the shaders out when that parameter changes. And that means you have one shader that's doing one side of the branch and the other shader that's doing the other side of the branch. If you were to use just a regular Boolean and did a branch based on it, the shader would have both of the branches in it, and it would calculate both of them and then pick the one that you chose. And so using a keyword makes it cheaper because you're only actually calculating one half of the branch instead of both. That's a great question.
I'm glad that it was asked. And I know I believe we had another question asked earlier about the performance impact. So I'm glad that this kind of touched on that as well. Very, very good.
I think it is important to point out here that whether you put your parameters inside the subgraph or in the shader graph itself, that has no impact on performance at all. This is purely an organizational feature so that you can easily add parameters inside of subgraphs and not have to do all this extra work of connecting them up outside. So you have this new setting here called promote to final shader, and that does not impact performance in any way whatsoever.
There we go.
Yeah.
I think that this little explanation has tangentially answered some of the other questions, which is great. If you guys have any more that don't get answered, because we do have a lot that we want to cover today, head on over to the discussions page there and make sure to ask those questions. Follow up. Ben, I know you're in there frequently. I know your team is eager, especially with all of this these new features coming. I think that you guys would have a quick turnaround to getting some answers to your questions if you don't get them here today.
Yep.
The next one that we're going to show off, I'm really excited about. So, Ben, are we ready for the next one?
Yeah, and something that I want to preface is by saying I've kind of ordered these in order from how big of a group of people I think that they will affect. Not necessarily least to best, but how many people I think that the features will help. So we talked about 8 texture coordinates, which maybe is kind of a niche audience, and then the interpolation, which will be helpful to maybe a few more people. Parameters in nested subgraphs is even a bigger group of people still, and this last one I think will be a very big benefit to everyone. I don't want to oversell it, but
I mean, I'm excited about it as someone who doesn't use shader graphs. So, Ben, I'm pumped. Let's get into it.
All right. So, and this one is going to require a little bit of setup as well. one of the problems with shader graph is that when you want to create a new shader, you come down here, and I apologize in advance because the text on my menu is going to be pretty small. But when we want to create a new shader graph, we right click down here in the project window and we choose create and then find shader graph and then find URP, which is the render pipeline we're using. And then we find which of these shaders we might want to create. And for new people, this workflow can be kind of daunting. Like I have to navigate 4 layers deep into this menu. And when I get to the end of it, I have to know what all these mean. Like what does a canvas shader do that's different from a sprite unlit shader? I don't know. And there's no help here for helping me decide this. So that's one problem. And then the other problem that we have is once I've created this shader, so I just made a new one, and I'm going to double click on it here to jump into it. Once I've created this, what I get is a completely blank workspace. And where do I start? I don't know how to make shaders. Well, I do, but hypothetically,
Where would I start, Ben?
yes, exactly.
Mhm.
So this can be intimidating. So we have this very deep right click menu, which can be intimidating. And then once you get to the bottom of it, it's intimidating again because my canvas is completely blank. And so what we're doing now is we're trying to solve both of these problems and a lot more actually with a new way to create shader graph shaders. And so I'm going to demonstrate that for you now. I can pick create shader graph. And some of you, if you're really eagle-eyed, if you're watching really close, you might have seen this in the menu. Create shader graph from template.
Ooh, we got templates. We got
All right.
templates.
So when I select this, it opens up a brand new shader graph template browser. And for those of you that are familiar with VFX Graph, VFX Graph has had this tool for a little while, but we've now brought this same idea over to shader graph.
Yeah.
And so I can open up the template browser, and instead of just that right click menu with a list of names of possible shaders that I could create, now I actually have a much larger list of possible shaders. And not only that, but well, let me just give you a little bit of a tour here. So on the left, I have all of the available templates. And the templates are sorted into categories. So I have basics, which are intended to be the ones that you'll use most often.
Mhm.
I have decals. I have particles. I have templates that are made for UGUI UI options. And I have image processing like full screen effects and custom render texture templates. And if you're wondering what any of these are, like previously when they were in that right click menu, you had no way of knowing like what are these, you just had to know.
Yeah.
But now you can pick one. Like what in the world is a particle unlit shader? What does that do for me? So I can pick that. And then over here on the right side, I get a nice thumbnail image of what a resulting what a thing in the game might look like if it had that shader applied to it. And I get a description of what that template's going to give me. So I can pick a material volume template and it shows me, what does a material volume do? Well, there's a illustration of it. Here's an illustration of a simple decal. I've got the graffiti Unity logo spray painted on the ball there. We had a bunch of our tech artists go kind of crazy and do a lot of really fun things with these thumbnails. So you can see we've got the basic one, which just is standard lighting. But if I come down here to the particles, this is what lit particles look like. This is what unlit particles look like. This is what a full screen effect might do, where it's like applying tint to the whole screen rather than just being applied to the ball. So we kind of had some fun with coming up with these templates. I don't have HDRP installed in this project, but if you have HDRP installed, by the way, the templates that show up in this list are absolutely context sensitive. So if you have URP or HDRP installed, it's going to show you a template set that's specific for your
Oh,
content.
wow.
And I
Okay,
don't
so
have URP or I don't have HDRP installed, but if
gotcha,
I did, it would show me like hair templates and water
gotcha.
templates and that kind of thing.
So if someone, as this gets out and more people experiment with this, if someone has a different list or is like, oh, so and so is using this one, but I don't have that, that might be one of the reasons of kind of differing options, right? Okay.
Yes. And as we go forward, when we're adding new features, we're also going to include templates for those new features. So I mentioned at the top of the stream, there are 3 new features that we're not announcing today.
Secrets.
Yes. But with those new features will also come new templates for the browser.
Which is fun. And we've talked about this a little bit, Ben, and you already have a wealth of backlog and myriad of plans, which is great. But for us to basically come in here and say, hey, let's pick out a template and show people where they would use this and maybe take it and level it up a little bit, I think is going to be really, really helpful for people as well. I know there's more of this to get into, but Technical Harry would like to know, will all of these transfer once the new Graph API drops?
That's a great question. The template browser feature is going to be available in ShaderGraph 2, as well as a set of templates. We are going to need to remake those and that's going to be a big part of my job developing ShaderGraph 2. We have a huge library of sample content built up, as well as these templates, and all of that's going to need to be built for ShaderGraph 2 as well. So I have my work cut out for me for the next little while, like recreating all of this content to work in ShaderGraph 2. But never fear, that is coming.
There we go. Love the context. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, so I mentioned several problems that we were solving with this. One of them was, it's hard to find the template that you want to create. The other one was when you open up your new shader that you created, it's a brand new blank canvas, and you don't really know what to do with it. Well, the nice thing about that is, other than this template up here at the top of the browser, which is just called empty shader graph, all of the rest of these templates actually have shader content in them. So it's not just a blank canvas, but it's a starting place for the shader that you might be wanting to create. So if we take a look at the decal category here, for example, if I choose Decal Simple, and then I hit this Create button down here, it's going to create a new shader for me. And I can just call this, we'll just call it Decal Simple, just to be simple. And if I go ahead and open this new shader that I just created, instead of a blank canvas, it starts me out with a reasonable set of nodes for what you might want to do with a simple decal shader. So it has a texture sample, it has a tint color multiply, and then it passes those into the base color in the alpha. So like you were saying, like if you don't want to start from scratch, you can open this up and the decal simple template will have a simple decal shader that's there that you can start on. Now, if you want to add a normal map to it, or if you want to add mask maps to it, you can do that. But this is a great place to start. We wanted to make these templates so that you didn't have to delete things if you didn't want to, but that they would be a good starting place that you could add things to. So we kind of made them a little bit bare bones. They don't have all the features that you might want, but they do have the basics in here. And instead of starting from absolute scratch and having to add, your texture sampler every time, now you can start from here, and it's a lot quicker way to get going. All right. Well, do you want to move into the next portion? Are there questions about the browser in general?
I've been keeping tabs on it, and there's been a couple of questions about, can users create their own templates? And I want to reassure everybody, the first person that asked, I said spoilers, but we will come back to that at the end of the stream. The answer is yes, and we will find a way. I think it'll be very, very cool, because I think that was one of the questions that I asked as well, is like, Ben, I think one of the use cases you provided for that was if you are working with a team of artists and you want everyone to kind of have a unified shader graph, you can just upload that template and people can use it, something to that effect, right?
Yeah, and I actually have a whole demo that we're going to show about that toward the end of the stream. I wish somebody hadn't spoiled it, but Yeah, we will definitely we will definitely get
I mean, I
that.
feel like I spoiled it because ultimately that was just a little comment in chat and then I brought it to everybody, but I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be really fun. So, this is your templates. This is a little sneak peek of these. Again, everything here is in ShaderGraph 6.3. It currently is in alpha. If you want a full description of everything broken down, I've put a link in the chat here that will take you to the discussions post from Ben's team with all of the detailed information. Continue to ask questions. We'll continue to try to answer them. But we do have a couple of tutorial type things that we want to show you guys here as well. So Ben, we'll turn things back over to you to dive into this. What's the first one that we're going to look at?
Okay, so we're going to use the template browser here to create a decal shader. So again, I'll pick create shader graph from template. And here we have two different potential templates for creating decals. We have a decal simple template and we have a decal material volume template. And the decal simple is basically what you can see in this thumbnail here. You can think of it as graffiti on a wall, right? It's just projecting a color onto a surface. And when most people think of decals, they think of, we're going to project this color onto my object. But there is actually a cooler way of using decals, which is projecting a material. And this material has color, normal, and masks, just like any other material might. So you can see in the thumbnail here, I'm using our sample cobblestones material, and it has a normal map. It has the cobblestones color. It has, smoothness and ambient occlusion and all of those things. And we're projecting that material onto the surface. But we're not just projecting it in one dimension. We're actually projecting it as a volume. And that's what I want to show you in this little example. So I'm going to pick decal material volume and hit create here. And we're going to call this decal material volume. And then I'll also make a material based on this. So I'm going to right click on my decal material volume shader and pick create material. And my material is called decal volume material. And now what I'm going to do is come over here. I've created a decal projector in my scene already, and I'm just going to unhide it. But just so you know, like there's nothing fancy about this. I can just right click here and pick rendering URP decal projector. That's how I created that object. And by default, my decal material projector, I'm just going to hide this box here so it's not distracting.
It was a great box, but it is very distracting. I get it.
Okay. So now we've got a decal here, and you can see that it has a default material on it that is just, it's just a white, flat white projecting surface. And I can grab this decal and move it around. So if I want my white to be projected on my rock, I can do that. If I want it to be projected on the ground, I can do that. Well, in this case, I've created this cooler version of my material here called a material volume. I need to set up some textures. And so let me just put my textures in here. I've got this dry soil color texture. I've got a normal map for it. And I've got a mask map for it. And now that that material is set up, if I pick my decal projector and use this material on my decal instead, did you see what happened there? Kind of subtle, but what happened was this dirt material that's on my terrain, I'm now using as my decal projector, and I can move this around, and you can see wherever I put it, becomes dirt. And, I was saying normally we think of decals as just projecting in one direction, but this shader that I've made, let me open this up here so you can see what the shader is doing. This shader that I've made actually uses a triplanar projection to project that material. And so instead of just projecting the dirt from one axis or one dimension, it's projecting it in all three dimensions. And so no matter where I put this dirt, no matter what angle it's facing, it's always going to look correct. So if I put this dirt on my rock here, it's going to look good from the sides. It's going to look good from the top. It's going to look good from the bottom. That decal is projected in all dimensions.
Cool.
And this is really great because I can use it to, for example, blend this rock in with the terrain. So if I want my rock, normally the rock has a hard edge there where it intersects
Hmm.
with my terrain. But if I want to blend that in, I can use this volume decal for that. And now my rock has that same dirt material that I have in my terrain, but
Wow.
now it's projected onto the rock instead.
I like this. The bull is asking, is the decal additive or does it replace the current material? So is it layered on top of what's already there or is it replacing it?
You can make additive decals, but this one is replacing it. It's
Okay.
using lerp.
Interesting. Lerp. More lerp, everybody.
Yeah,
More
so
lerp.
in my decal shader, I've got the alpha channel exposed here, and that channel there determines where. I should clarify this. If I turn on my widgets here, you can see that there's this box. That's my decal volume. And basically any of the geometry in my scene that intersects that box is going to have the decal applied to it. But then within the decal itself, I can also tell it, I want the decal to show up here or not here. And that's what I'm doing with this alpha channel. So in this case, I've got this subgraph here called decal edge mask applied to the alpha. And what that does is it makes the edges soft.
Okay.
So I don't know how well you can see it. That plant is kind of in the way, but right there on the edge, let me find a better example actually. Come over here. Right now, that edge is like softly blending out.
Hmm.
And that is controlled by that alpha channel. So if I wanted the decal to look like it was patchy, I
Mm.
could put a patchy pattern into the decal shader and kind of break it up. This is another good use for this, not just for dirt. I could use this for moss. So if I wanted my rock
Mm.
to look mossy or, that kind of thing, and I could make my moss kind of patchy looking by using that alpha channel to break up the moss so that it was only applied in little splotches instead of like uniformly.
This is great.
Yeah, just another idea.
I had another question, and I know there's a lot more to get into here. Technical Harry says it's really cool, but probably a bit spicy performance-wise, mostly because artists love to go ham on decals everywhere. And earlier, Jihad asked, "Is decal projection performance-friendly on mobile?" Can we speak to kind of the performance in terms of this approach?
Sure, sure. So when you add decals into your scene, Unity is doing a pre-pass before it renders your objects to render all of your decals into a decal buffer.
Mm,
And then that decal buffer is then combined with the objects in your scene. And doing that pre-pass, it actually has to render depth and normals as well. And so that can be expensive. So if your project is mobile only, you may not be able to afford doing decals. Now, in my testing, the testing that I've done, decals are fairly cheap, but again, it's going to depend on what your, lowest hardware cutoff is. So
right.
this is something you want to try, and if you can afford it, it's great. If you can't, well, leave it out and get the frames per second back. But for platforms where it's available, decals are fantastic.
That's great. And Ben, if people were looking for like some videos, like maybe some short form tutorial style videos on optimization, like where could they find those?
You're just baiting me with that one.
Everyone
No,
go and check
I
out Ben's YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ben Cloward. There are some fantastic videos, shader
yeah.
graph, lighting, optimization. Go and check those out. Videos uploaded weekly.
Yeah, the new series that I just started, I just launched episode 4 of that this morning, and it's a whole series of videos on optimization. I am going to get into decals. We haven't gotten there yet, but I'll talk about decals a little bit later and how they affect the optimization of your project.
Great. Is there still more for us to explore, or should I continue to pull a couple of questions?
On decals, I think I'm about done. So yeah,
Beautiful.
I take
Let
some
me
questions and then we'll move on to the next thing.
Perfect. Let me fire away here. Andrew the Day says, does the decal apply to all objects in the volume, or is it just the first object from the face of the box? I.e., if there are two objects, one behind the other, will the hidden object have the decal applied or not?
Not.
There we go.
Because the decal effect is added to the scene in screen space. So it does apply to all objects in the volume, but that's a great question. If the object is behind something else, it won't get applied to that because it's doing depth testing to see what needs to get applied, and whatever is closest in depth is where it's going to be applied.
Gotcha. Red Reagan asking, can it add pretty complex effects like parallax for 3D holes and such?
Oh, interesting. I've never tried that.
Ooh, maybe we could figure that out. Not now, though.
Yeah.
I don't want you to have to. And I can see the wheels spinning, Ben. I know you want to
Yeah.
problem solve it already, but Kendler asking, are decal volumes only on 6.3?
Oh
I'll
no,
let you answer, even though I have it.
decals have been in Unity for several, I think maybe since 2020, something like that. They've been in Unity for a long time. Yeah.
It is this template that
Right.
would be 6.3.
Because again, it used to be when you wanted to create a shader for a decal, you'd start out with a completely blank graph. But now, we've figured out, we've basically built this wheel for you, so you don't have to reinvent this, and you can use this shader exactly as it is, or you can start with this one and add more to it, or change it, or delete things, however you want. But this is a great starting place to
Mm-hmm.
get going.
Mm-hmm. The last one that we'll bring on this, and then we'll jump into our next one, is Shader Factor Studio on YouTube says, is exclusion easy? Because that's a wall I've come across before. Is it easy to exclude objects from it?
I wouldn't call it easy, but it is possible.
Okay.
You can create different rendering layers and then tell Unity, hey, apply this decal only to this layer, or apply it to everything except for this layer. That's definitely possible. It requires a little bit of setup, but you can do it.
I will. That question is for later, so that is a-okay. Thank you for this. I'm loving the templates already. They're already so great.
Nice.
Because typically, like, we come in and we're like, cool, here's what we finished with, and we'll show you how we got there. But now, for some of these things, it'll be like, here's the foundation already created for you. You can go in and use it, and we'll show you how to level it up, that type of thing. So,
Yeah.
we have one other one that we want to use here. Ben, are we ready to dive into the next one?
Absolutely. All right, let me explain what's happening here. I'm going to unhide this sphere here. And what I've got is a sphere, and I'm just going to hide my mirror ball here so that we're not all pretending to be John Travolta. What we've got here is a material that is using the URP lit shader. So if I pick this material and we drop down the selection here in the material where I'm picking which shader to apply, the shader that this is using is the Universal Render Pipeline lit shader, if you can see that checkbox there. And what this is it's a shader that is written in code. And this is the most common shader that people use because it ships with Unity. It's fairly extensive in terms of the features that it has. You can see that you can put in normals, base, masks, emission, tiling, detail. There's a ton of features in this shader. So I would say that, by and large, everybody who uses Unity is familiar with the lit shader in URP. But the problem is if you use this lit shader and you're not an engineer, you're like me, you're a tech artist or an artist. And then you want to, your art director comes to you and he says, hey, can we add this thing to the lit shader? Can we scroll the UV coordinates? Or, can we add an extra detail layer or something like that? Well, you come up here to the shader selection and you're like, oh, there's a nice edit button there. If I just press that edit button, maybe, oh, and then it pops up the dreaded Visual Studio. If you even have that, if you even have that installed, and shows you this is the lit shader. And it's
Fun.
just like, yeah.
Very approachable for
And
everybody
yeah,
involved.
you know, and that may mean something to some of you, but to the artist, they're just going to be like, oh no, what's this? And so what we've done instead is we've created a version of that lit shader that's in Shader Graph. And so let me show you that. So if I just come down here and I pick Create Shader Graph from Template, I can pick this template that's called Lit Full. And there's a nice description of it here. But basically, to summarize, TLDR, it's the code version of the lit shader, but not code.
Ooh.
So here's our template. I just create, and I'm just going to call this one full lit. And what I'm going to show you now may scare you, but I'm going to go ahead and open up full lit. And yeah, there, yeah, wow.
Yep.
And
That does. You were right.
I told you before that the code version of the lit shader was full featured. And so in order to create all those features in Shader Graph, that's what we've done, but it takes a big graph. But this has almost all of, I think it's very, very close to what to having all of the functionality of the code version of the lit shader, but it's in a Shader Graph version.
Mm-hmm.
So let me show you what you can do with that. So now that I have this full lit shader, I could come here to my lit example.
Ben, we have Kieran saying, never mind, this is just as scary for now. Ben is about to show you why it's less scary.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So if I drop this down, and instead of URP lit, I'm just going to pick lit, and there is my full lit shader that I just created. So now it's available in the menu. And when I change this, I want you to watch that ball there with the cobblestones on it, because we're changing the material from the code version of URP lit to the Shader Graph version. I'm just going to pick that, and we'll take a look at it here. Did you see a change?
The cyan.
It did go to cyan. So let's change it. Yeah, let's change it back.
Okay.
We'll go to URP lit again. Okay, did you see a change there?
Yes.
You did.
Subtle.
Okay.
Or hallucination. Either one. Is the intention that there is no change?
There should be almost no change.
Then I made it up in my head.
Yeah,
it's not the first time. When we were playing the lo-fi music earlier, I also thought that was sending me messages. So it's okay.
All right, so we've got the lit shader applied, or we've got the Shader Graph version applied here. Let's switch back again. We're going to go to the lit shader. Did you see a change?
I saw pixel jump, but nothing definitive. Nothing distinct, I should say.
So we'll go to the lit version. Yeah.
Literally nothing that time.
It's it's exactly the same.
Don't worry about me, everybody.
And so now that we've got this shader in Shader Graph, and all of the settings that we had on the code version of our shader copied over, our material is like exactly compatible. All the parameters are the same. And so now that we have this Shader Graph version of the shader, we can go in and change it. So it's doing parallax mapping here if I want to. That feature's not enabled, but I could. But I know, hey, I don't need parallax mapping, so I can just delete that. If I know that I'm not going to use detail mapping, I can delete all of these nodes from it. If I know I'm not going to use emissive, I can delete all of these nodes from it. So I can just come in here, and instead of so this is the complaint that we used to get from our users a lot before. They would say, hey, like I want to make a lit shader in Shader Graph that's different, that has a different feature set from the code version. But when I open Shader Graph, it's blank. And so the first thing that I have to do is spend a week imitating the code version in Shader Graph, and then I can edit it. Well, we just saved you that week. So now you have the code version of the shader, but in Shader Graph, and it's ready for you to start playing with and changing and doing whatever you need. So this is the real strength of this template browser.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it making it easier for you to select the shader that you want to create, but once you create it, it's already giving you like 10 steps forward along that path to
Right.
where you want to get to creating that shader. So, we're making your creation process easier in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Awesome says, thank you, Ben, for doing this. Leo Lelele, I'm sure I got that one right. Does this support additional lights? Could we create custom lighting using this template?
Ooh. I'm going to say yes, but not with what I've showed you today.
Okay. So it's what we said
Dot.
earlier. Easy, no. Possible, yes. But also, Ben, if I'm not mistaken, are you baiting that hook again for
There might be
additional?
there might be another live stream.
There's already been a petition signed in chat to bring you back once we're able to talk about those additional features. So we'll make sure that we have some time. The team rallied. The community was raising hands. There was a whole thing. So we'll make sure that we'll find that opportunity.
All right. Yes, I will spoil it just a little bit and say that custom lighting is going to be a big part of that next stream that we do.
Ooh, we like it. We like it. We're getting little kernels, little nuggets. See the value that you get from coming to these live streams? You get a little breadcrumb of what's coming. You know what I mean? We are looking at pretty good, Ben. Is there anything else we wanted to show off from the lit shader or the lit full shader, or do we want to start showing people how they could create their own templates?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes, fun.
Let's do that.
Fun.
Okay, so this I showed you about half of the power of the template browser so far. And by the way, there's one other thing that I just want to throw in here out of the blue. Like this isn't in the script or anything, but when I give you the tour of the template browser, we have this big list of templates, and obviously this list is going to grow. It's going to get bigger. And so there's some features that we're working on that aren't in yet, but they will be coming later. And I just want to kind of give you a little bit of a tease. So eventually up here at the top, we're going to have a search bar for templates. So you can type in search terms if you know your template is named something specific.
Sure.
And there's also going to be a filter. So if you know, I only want to show the decal templates, or I only want to show the post-processing templates, that sort of thing. We're going to have a new feature up there at the top yet. That feature is not quite ready, and so we haven't put it in this release, but it will be coming. So I just wanted to mention that. So that is kind of like the first half of the usefulness of this template browser. And the second half of the usefulness of the template browser is that absolutely you can customize it to make your own templates. And the reason that I say, half is because I think being able to make your own templates is such a big deal that is as important as everything that I've already showed you. So let me show you how it works. I'm just going to come in here and just create a random new shader, URP lit shader, and I'm going to call this my custom shader. And so now I have a shader that I can use in my project. If I want to add this to the template browser, it's super easy.
Okay.
I can just come over here with the shader selected. I can just come over here to the inspector and check this use as template box.
One checkbox.
That's it.
Short tutorial. Very useful.
There's some other things that you can add as well.
Of course.
So we'll get to that. So you can add a custom name. So I'm going to say this is going to be my project lit. Whoops. Need to be in the box. My project lit shader. And I'm going to make it my instead of pie. You know, we all like pie, but.
Oh,
And then for the category, I'm going to call this my project. And then I have a box here where I can type a description. And I can also give it a custom icon. So if I want to pick a different icon, I can pick that one. If I want to pick a thumbnail for it, I can use one of the thumbnails that's in here already if I want to, or make my own. But anyway, so this is now ready to be used in the template browser. So I just click the save button. It saves the metadata there from my custom shader. And now when I open up the template browser, drum roll, please. Now I have this new category here called my project, and I have that shader showing up as a template.
there we go.
And so now people on my team can use the templates that I created, not just the ones that Unity created that are in the browser already. So if I wanted to use this for my team, let's say that I'm really annoyed as a tech artist because there's this feature that needs to be turned on all the time for the shaders in my project, but my team always forgets. So I can make templates with that feature turned on already. And then I can just add these templates to the browser. And with these added, so now I've got the templates and I can tell my team, hey, whenever you make a new shader, use the browser and use the shaders that are in my team's shaders category. And I can add decal shaders in there. I can add lit shaders in there. I can add post-process shaders in there, however I want to use this. But now these shaders are like specific to my project. So if I have some kind of, custom subgraph in the templates, or something that's very specific to the way that my project works, or if I want to make sure, hey, like, don't ever use this feature because that one's too expensive for our project, I can set up these templates so that my team, whenever they're creating shaders, starts off with the basics of the shader for my project, the specific that my project needs, already in there. And I can just tell them, as long as you make a shader using the templates that I've created, you can go crazy with it. Well, not too crazy. But yeah, this is going to be great because people will be able to use the template browser to create a set of, starter shaders that are just right for their team.
I like that a lot.
And not only that, but asset store creators as well.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Absolutely. So if you're an asset store creator, you can create a collection of shaders that includes templates. And then whenever the person who's installed your content opens the template browser, your templates will be there, front and center, ready for them to use. So I don't know about you guys, but I think this is fantastic.
Yeah. People seem excited about this as well. Andrew the Day says that's too easy. Could you make it more difficult to do so it looks like I'm actually doing work? So that's good.
Sure, Andrew. Absolutely.
I believe we kind of just answered this question. What Golden Character Design says are the templates per project or per organization. You can kind of get them at any point in time in any which way you'd like, correct?
So wherever the asset is, that's where it will be applied to. So I just created a new shader in my project, and I checked that uses template. So anybody who opens the template browser with that shader in their project is going to get that shader in their template browser. If you were to create a custom package and put shader graphs with use as template in that package, wherever that package was applied, that's what would show up in the browser. The browser is going to grab shaders from all of the packages that are installed in your project, plus the asset folder in your project itself. Well, anything in the asset folder or inside it. And that's what'll show up in the template browser. So if you have the shaders only in your one project, they'll only show up in that project. But if you have them installed as a package, which is in all of your company's projects, then that's how they'll show up.
There we go. I think no real questions. PC game developer asked, can we add a thumbnail? Which we can. You showed us
Yes.
how to do that, which
You
is
can create
great.
your own custom icon as well as your own custom thumbnail.
Fantastic. We love that. Some positive feedback. People seem excited about this one, Ben. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on this, or should we move to community Q&A?
I think now's a good time for questions.
Beautiful. So there were a few that we kind of caught just as we moved away from some of the earlier topics. So I'm going to take you all the way back here. Mr. Awesome was asking about when we were in interpolation. Could you use, sorry, so you could smooth Cinti assets vertices to create a more cartoon style? Is that something that people would be able to use in that space or accomplish in that space?
So Cinti assets are designed to be kind of chunky looking already. And so what you're doing with this feature that I talked about today is turning off interpolation. But Cinti is using the way that the textures are set up in those assets to already be chunky, like without this feature. So turning on no interpolation might make them look even chunkier. I would have to get one of his assets and try it out to
Sure.
see what that's doing.
Of course.
But this is more for taking assets that are already like smooth and nice and making them chunky. But I'm pretty sure his are already chunky. Yeah, I would have to try that out to see.
Gotcha. Dennis on the YouTube side is asking, isn't read this? This is a new question on the template, creating your own templates here. Isn't this the same as saving my template shader as template xy.shader and then making it part of the repository?
Yes, but the feature that we're introducing is the browser, right? So you can create a shader and give it to your team and tell them to use it. But we have the browser now, which no matter where you put the shader, if the uses template is checked, it's going to find it and add it to the list so that it's easily available to anyone in your team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have Ryan on the Twitch side that said, oh my God, that's fantastic. You have no idea how often I've needed a shader from an asset and cannot find it. So this is the solution to that, which is great to see as well. I think we've answered quite a bit of the questions as we went through.
Nice.
Ben, I'm going to float something out to you here. If we can't or you don't want to, totally okay. But Koi Code earlier in the stream on the Twitch side says, I would like to see that disco ball with the rain shader, pretty please. And I said, if we have time at the end of the stream, it was one of those. If you are good at the grocery store, we will get you a toy on the way out. Is that something that you can accomplish in a minute? Or should we just we can always say no, Ben. That's always an option here.
I'm a little bit leery of this arms race thing because we've done this the last 2 times on the stream where people ask me for kind of weird stuff, and I've been like, well, maybe. I think it might take me a little bit longer than a minute.
No problem. No problem. Listen, we've done a lot of other, we did a whole stream on creating rain effects. So we've got it. It's there. People can go and find that information as well. So don't feel the pressure, Ben, right? It's always an option to say no or not right now. Always, always, always.
Yeah, I think that would be a little bit more complicated for me to set
Sure.
up than we've got time for, unfortunately.
All
Sorry to
good.
disappoint.
No, Ben, you know what? I always appreciate your willingness. And there's been 2 other times in this stream that I've asked you a question. You're like, I wonder if I could solve that right now. And I'm like, we don't have to right now. So don't worry. Your willingness is always going to be appreciated here. An Angel Lanier says, here is a wild idea. Could it be theoretically possible to import a code shader as a single node within a graph? Might not be possible because of the various phases of the rendering, but if that is possible, it would be an awesome feature.
Yeah, no, and that the person who gave you the question is exactly right. The reason that it's not possible is that there are several passes that happen, and the shader is taking into account whether your environment is deferred rendered or forward rendered. And so if you were able to take some of the code, and in fact, I will show you if you create a custom function node, the person that asked the question is probably already aware of this, but in a custom function node, you can actually add in code right here.
Right.
You can either type it in as a string or you can reference a file that has code functions in it. And so we do allow that. You can't take a complete shader and drop it into shader graph because that complete shader does a lot of other things that are like outside what you're defining in just the graph itself.
There we go. Trying to see, we've got a couple more questions here. Affix says, is it possible to make a lighting model like Burley shading in shader graph? Are you familiar with Burley shading, Ben?
I've heard that term before, but I can't remember what it is. I'm
Gotcha.
sorry.
I feel like that's important context to have. So
Yeah.
that's a good one. I think we've kind of got. Oh, hold on. Vanny says, I saw the material UI has changed for shader graph shaders. What are the customizations? Was that something that we saw or discussed? Or was it just that it was
I think
in the
I
template
understand
browser?
what that person is getting at. So if I select this here, normally with a shader graph shader, like the texture here is a little bit larger and these objects are not inlined here. That's a good question. This person is extremely observant. Let me show you what's going on there. This is actually using what's called a custom shader GUI, I believe. Got too many assets here that aren't very well labeled.
I feel like that's relatable.
Yeah. If we open up this shader again and we open up the graph inspector and look at the graph settings, down here at the bottom, you can see that there's this line called custom editor GUI. And there's a path here to a bit of code that actually does this custom material layout.
Gotcha.
And this GUI that's in here is the same user interface that's being used for the code version. And that's one of the reasons why the settings were able to transfer over seamlessly. So that's why this looks like really tight and well organized, whereas some of the UIs that you might see just with default shader graph look a little bit more like dynamically generated. This one is actually like carefully organized by a designer, I believe, but it's because I'm using that instead of having this blank like it usually is. That's a good question.
Good. I'm glad that you had a deeper understanding because I definitely was thinking something very, very different. Ben, one more question. We got time for it? You ready for it?
Yeah.
Rodrigo is asking, do you see in the future some sort of node for the unlit shader graph that will facilitate access to information like shadows that would make it easier for me to create stylized shader?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe so.
Maybe. Oh, maybe.
Well, we'll have to talk about that.
Okay, we should find time to talk about that, Ben. Maybe in the future here.
Yeah.
Maybe in the future here. And if that sounds confusing and that means you were not here for a lot of the stream, we are talking of some of the new features that are targeting 6.3 with shader graph that are currently in alpha, but we're not talking about all of them. And we will find time in the coming weeks or months to as we are able to speak to them, we will. So don't worry. And I think with that, we've kind of done it. We've kind of run the gamut. We've shown off new features. We've shown off the tutorial, or sorry, the template browser, which is awesome. And we've dived into. I'm actually asking if anyone has that answer, please. But we checked out a couple of the templates themselves and showed off those features and showed you how to create your own. So there's a lot of really, really cool stuff here. If you join this stream in the middle, this is Ben Cloward, an absolute expert with shader graph, and you should go and check out his YouTube channel for a lot of short form, very to the point tutorials. Ben will be on a stream again soon. Don't worry, because that was already one of the questions. When is the next Ben stream? We will have another one coming soon. If you, again, caught this in the middle, The full VOD will be available on YouTube. Please check it out. Go back, get all of the information. You can watch it on 1.5 times if you want. I know people that have done that. It's very, very cool. Ben, I want to thank you again massively for joining us on this stream. Every single time you're here, it's so fun, so enjoyable, so inspirational. So thank you very, 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 very much for the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I loved it, and I've really enjoyed the challenge of working with the ShaderGraph team on these features, and they were all like really excited to have them presented today. So thanks a lot for allowing us to do this.
Of course, Ben. Always here to help put a spotlight on the hard work that you and your team are doing. Absolutely, we will. So Ben, one final thank you, and then we'll say goodbye to you, and we'll put you backstage. We'll come say hey in just a second. Thank you so very much, Ben. And with that, Unity community, just us here together. Of course, we are live on these channels mostly 2 times a week to give you the latest and greatest, showing off different features, tutorializing different things, bringing you use cases, giving you engine agnostic game dev advice, knowledge, tips, learnings, all of those great things. So please come on back. If this is your first one, thank you so very much for being here. If you've been at every stream, thank you so very much for your dedication. Our next stream is planned for next week. We do not have a stream on Tuesday. Ooh, Corey's here. Everyone say hey to Dr. Corey Green in the chat. We do not have a stream on Tuesday. We have a stream on Thursday next week, and we're going to be talking about dots. The team behind Dawn Apart is coming to the stream to show off all of the development that they did behind the scenes using dots. It'll be a very, very cool opportunity. Laurent is returning to the stream, so this will be a very technical, very, I hope, inspirational stream to show you what's capable with some of this new tech. That is on August 14th, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. GMT. Keep an eye out on the YouTube page for all of the events as they are updating. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with us. Another thank you to Ben, and a big thank you to Jack working behind the scenes to put this episode together. Until I see you all again, Unity community, my name is Jackson. Have a great rest of your day.